What is up? It's a Figure Hunter. Today we've got a review for the heart rate accuracy analysis for the new Suunto vertical, specifically when doing CrossFit or high intensity interval training. So if you like this review, please give it a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing for more. I've actually got a review coming out tomorrow of the midpoint review for the Suunto vertical, and it's basically the 10 things I'm struggling with the Suunto vertical. I really want to like this watch, but there are a few things that they need to fix that I'm just really having a hard time with. So in this review specifically, we're going to test the accuracy of the new heart rate sensor built into the Suunto vertical to see if it can keep up using the optical heart rate sensor with more rigorous style workouts and workouts that have wrist flex and higher intensity and fluctuation of intensity. So I've tested it for 5 specific workouts, and I'm not going to actually test it for any more workouts, which you'll see in a minute. All of these tests are versus an ECG chest strap. I happen to use the Garmin HRM Pro Plus, which I really particularly like a lot. I'll put a link to purchase one of those down below. But it's the only way to get true accuracy, especially when you're doing high intensity workouts and have a lot of flex across the wrist or heavy barbell or weight movement type things. So with what we're going to do today, we're going to look at charts for how it compared to the chest strap across the 5 workouts. We're going to talk about the negative training impacts of heart rate inaccuracy, and we're going to see it literally in the Suunto type system for why it has an impact on your training analysis. And then last, we're going to look at a correlation graph to see the overall accuracy as it relates to a coefficient of correlation, but just direct comparison to an ECG chest strap and what the accuracy score looked like. So with that, let's dive in. All right, so here was the first graph, and it looked actually pretty strong, pretty good. Definitely, it was in the high or the mid 80s for correlation. Then we've got the next workout, total plummeting, and I pulled the watch band tight, just terrible all throughout the middle. Here, it looks similar sort of for the first third, but then when some of the peaks come, it's like the actual opposite of the peaks. And those were heavy backlifting sessions. And then you have the Metcon itself, and it just sort of falls off throughout the Metcon. It reaches back up and then falls off. And then somehow it tracks the little last portion at the end. Okay. And then you have an abomination, like complete failure. Didn't pick up the lifting, didn't pick up the Metcon, and then didn't pick up some of the after work that I put in after class. Then you have the most recent where it actually tracked some of the initial portion okay, and then failed to track the main portion of the Metcon in the middle, had some sort of erroneous spike in the later parts, and just overall, just not good. And why is this significant? And before we get into the correlation graph for all of these heart rate metrics, why is this significant? Well, because when you look at it, each of these heart rate exertion evaluations, this heart rate graph actually translates to a training stress score, which flows into your actual training analysis or training load analysis for how hard you're working, how hard you're pushing your fitness, either higher or lower. So you got a score of 41, but when using a chest strap, you got a score of 55. Now the score of 41 is 25% less. So you missed 1/4 of the value for your training analytics. Same thing, this got a training stress score of 43 versus a chest strap, which gave you a 47. Again, you missed 24% of your training value. Here, 74, so at least peaked a little bit higher, versus 83, which is 11% less. So you missed 11% of your training value. And then 67 versus 77 on the chest strap, you had 13% less of, all these metrics flowing in. And when you have a terrible workout, like a couple of those were just horrific, you're completely skewing what your actual training is looking like to get feedback for how your training is going if you're pushing your fitness or your load higher. And so when we get back into what was the evaluation of the correlation between a chest strap and the optical heart rate sensor built into the Suunto vertical, and this is that graph. So you can see if you look at it on a 1-to-1 line, the bottom representing the chest strap and the left, y-axis representing the Suunto vertical, you see that there were some measurements in the middle, but there were a whole bunch of measurements towards the bottom. That means as the heart rate was higher, the heart rate detected on the optical sensor on the Suunto vertical was lower. So you got a correlation metric across 5 workouts of 0.622, which I just translate as to not worthwhile for CrossFit or high intensity interval training. I'm not going to run a bunch of other scenarios to see, because some of those workouts were so horrific, it's just not worth testing. And you can see on the graph that there were multiple data points as the heart rate went higher, which is when you need to be tracking your cardiovascular strain for your training load analysis. The optical heart rate sensor on the Suunto vertical was tracking lower. So what do we see in summary? With a correlation of 0.622 to a chest strap, it is not accurate. With some of those graphs that you saw, it is not accurate. One of those workouts was one of the failed, workouts that had like a missing hole in the middle, was a half Murph, and it missed 24% of the strain in that workout. And that is just a big bummer. If you go in, you put in hard, rigorous effort, and the optical heart rate sensor didn't accurately track it, and in some cases didn't track it at all, that is a major bummer if you're wanting to get proper and positive or direct feedback on your training intensity, as well as your fitness development over time. So that marks a complete fail, which is why I'm not going to be testing it any further. As always, if you're going to do any intense type of workouts, especially workouts that involve a barbell or weightlifting or high intensity interval training, you want to use a chest strap so that you're getting accurate heart rate tracking, so that it flows through into the training analytics, and you're getting quality information or quality feedback back out of the training analytics for your hard workouts and your training program overall. So that is the review for the heart rate accuracy of the new Suunto vertical, specifically when doing CrossFit or high intensity interval training. Stay tuned tomorrow for the 10 things I'm really struggling with the Suunto vertical. I do want to like this watch, things I'm having a real hard time with. So with that, the Figure Hunter, thanks so much for watching.